A group of bandits breaks into the theater. Special forces arrive to suppress them, along with CIA agents who must merge with the rest of the soldiers. Their main goal is to save the right person and what they have. Special forces get a special gas into the duct, which should put people to sleep. John knocks down the door and eliminates the guards. After that, he calls the password so that the man understands that they are allies. Someone discovered him and staged a takeover of the opera to eliminate him. If he wants to live, he will get cooperation with John. After going down to the lower floor, John asks the man to sit on a chair and pretend to be asleep. After that, he notices how the soldier lays out bombs and realizes that John is not one of them, but he is saved by a partner at the soldier's side. John runs headlong to the wardrobe, where there is an important item. A little later, the group reunites. They change the man's clothes and guide him to a safe exit, but John wants to return to the gym in order to pick up all the bombs and save people. A SWAT officer notices John and points a gun at him. At that moment, John was looking at the bullet hole that disappears and flies through the SWAT officer, and there was another person behind him, who immediately runs away. John only had time to notice a small locket. Thanks to John's help, he managed to throw all the bombs to the top floor and get back into the car. However, the enemies figured out their plan and lured John into a trap. During the interrogation, the man finds John's elimination capsule and throws him out, but he didn't take into account that John's partner also has a capsule. And since John has the most important information, he gives him the capsule. When John opened his eyes, he was already lying in a hospital bed. John realizes that the pill wasn't real. According to the CIA agent, they were conducting a test. Since John proved his loyalty, he was chosen for a very important mission, on which the survival of the whole person depends. The code word is an argument. He is taken to a wind turbine, where he must impersonate an ordinary worker and return to dry land. There he meets Laura and gives her the code word. She says their main task is to prevent World War III. John suggests that they're dealing with nuclear bombs, but Laura says it's much worse. She gives me a gun and asks me to shoot. It seems strange to John because there are no bullets in the gun anyway. He takes aim at the target and the bullet instantly returns to the clip. There are 2 bullets on the table, but one of them is moving backwards in time. It is impossible to determine visually, only physically, since the bullet is inverted. But they didn't create it because they don't know how to do it. Someone from the future was able to make a breakthrough in science. John tries to use the cartridge, but nothing comes out, as he has to pretend that he drops it. From the bullet's point of view, he throws it. John picks up the gun once more, absorbing 2 bullets. He remembers seeing something similar during an operation in a theater. Laura is afraid that nuclear weapons can also be inverted. Now they have a lot of different objects with an inverted effect. To find out who owns the reverse weapon, he comes to Mumbai, where the meeting with the British agent Neil is arranged. John wants to get into the base of the main arms dealer. Neil finds it incredibly dangerous but still helps to develop a plan. With the help of a slingshot, they secure the cable and after full tension take off into the sky, climbing to the desired floor. Neil defuses the guards and John catches Sanjo, but he can't tell him the information he needs. And then Priya calls the keyword. It turns out that the whole business belongs to her, and the man is just a cover. Her buyer was businessman Andre, but when she sold the cartridges, they were completely ordinary. Most likely, Andre is a broker between the future and their time. The police arrive and the couple escapes using ropes. After a while, John returned to Britain, where he has an appointment with secret agent Crosby. He advises you to make friends with Andrew's wife named Kat. A painting that Kat can exhibit at her place will help in this. And so that John doesn't think about money, Crosby gives him a card with a large amount of money. From that day on, John began spying on Kat and later came to her place of work and showed her the painting he had bought from Thomas. Over dinner, Kat tells stories that she and her husband have a bad relationship. And one day she saw a man jumping off their yacht. She was very jealous of him because he was able to escape from her husband. But their conversation is interrupted by Andre's people and takes the girl away. But John must die, but he manages to fight back using any available objects. Andrew wanted Kat to see how his people dealt with John, but he came out completely unharmed. They're meeting again tomorrow. She says that the auction will be held in a closed hangar at the airport. Neil arrives there and introduces herself as a rich man, which allows her to learn a lot of useful information. The couple decides that in order to bypass the entire security system, they need to crash into the hangar with an airplane. Mahir and his men will help them in this. It remains to clarify all the details and proceed with the implementation of the plan. Mahir knocks out the security of the plane, and so that no one gets hurt, everyone is lowered down the rescue ladder. The pair enters the vault. It's at this moment that the plane crashes into the hangar, activating the alarm. The vault fills with gas, but they quickly pick the lock and go out into the corridor. After finding the right compartment, John immediately notices the bullet holes. As soon as he picks up the gun, the device activates. A soldier comes out from each side. At the same time, one of them moves in reverse time. He was the one who left bullet marks. John is a master fighter, but he has never fought against such an opponent. Neil manages to catch up with another soldier and take off his helmet. When he saw his face, he immediately ran back and asked not to kill the soldier. At the same moment, the shifter is sucked into the door. John wonders where the other soldier is, and Neil replies that he has dealt with him, and so that no one suspects anything. They pretend that they passed out because of the gas. Tomorrow, John confesses to Neil that they are searching for a temporary weapon. Neil is surprised by this, and that John has told him classified information. Later, John meets with Priya. He's sure that the people who attacked them are actually the same person who used the turnstile device for inversion. Henry got this device from the future. John will be able to meet with Andre if he gets the plutonium that Andre needs so much. As soon as John comes up with the story of his acquaintance with Kat, she persuades Andrew to invite John to dinner. In the late afternoon, he arrives at the meeting place. Andrew immediately begins to threaten and gives an order to walk up. John hints at the incident at the opera, and Andrew's look has changed. He makes another appointment. A new day comes, and Andre shows Kat a painting that John could not burn because Andre does not let down his instincts about the future, which means she still has to follow his orders. After which she moves to John's yacht. John tells the story of the missing Pluto. Their conversation is interrupted by Kat, who has decided to unfasten her safety belt, and Andre goes overboard, but John still needs him, and he has to save him. It's obvious that Kat doesn't like this, and then John gives up his gun to make Kat feel safer. As for Andre, he's grateful for saving his life, but he does not like to be due. He tells the story of where he dug up a capsule from plutonium, and when they found it, it contained gold bars and a document with his name on it, but he doesn't want anyone to find out about it, which is why he eliminated his partner. Later, Andrea wants to punish Kat, but she warns that she will scream and John will come to her rescue, and then Andre will have to kill him, and he will fail the deal. He realizes that Kat is right and leaves. At that moment, a helicopter lands on the yacht. John wants to know what's inside the capsule. It turns out that there is inverted gold. Volka finds John and attacks him. However, Andre does not eliminate John, as he still needs the plutonium they agreed on, and they give you a gold bar as payment. John tells Neil that Andre is burying the capsule and writing the coordinates. A moment later, there is gold in the capsule, but he does not know where this place is. Andre takes his wife to a warehouse with an invented weapon. Kat tries to confront Henry, which just pisses him off, and then Kat pulls out a gun. Henry reacted quickly, throwing a couple of punches. At this time, John's team attacks Andre's car, which is transporting plutonium, to prevent them from calling for help. The jammer is turned on. John breaks into the truck and steals a suitcase, inside of which was an object from the opera. Suddenly, they started talking backwards on the radio, and an inverted car attacked them. Andre was inside, holding Kat hostage. To save Kat, he has to give up the suitcase. Andre moves to another car with his suitcase. Kat is left alone, and her legs are tied, which is why John has to get into her car and hit the brakes. Andre's men immediately appear and dismiss John to the warehouse, where a time inversion mechanism is installed. John sees Andre, who puts Kat on a chair, and there is a bullet mark in front of her face. Andre speaks backwards, but for John to understand everything, the computer translates his speech. It turns out that John threw an empty box, and if he didn't tell her where the contents were hidden, Kat would die. Andrew wounds Kat, forcing John to name the hiding place, when suddenly another Andre appears, but their conversation is interrupted by soldiers, who drive both Andrews into the device. Neil is with the soldiers. John wants to understand why Andrew knew about their plan. Maybe it was Neil who turned them in. The soldiers explain that no one surrendered them. This is a counter-movement in time. Some of Andre's people move in reverse time, after which they tell Andre everything they have learned. However, he still doesn't know where the contents of the suitcase are hidden, and so that Kat doesn't die, they travel back in time. But the soldier warns that before moving, you need to see yourself outside the window. In order not to disappear into time, Weller clarifies that they must breathe inverted air, and they must not come into contact with the regular version of it. John comes to the surface and is amazed by the new sensations. He gets into the car, which was overturning on the road, and arrives at the place where he threw the box. There was nothing there. Then he inserts a microphone into the suitcase. John waits for Andre to pick him up and finds out that the whole algorithm is going to the hypersnitter. Henry notices John and causes an accident. After exchanging a few words, he ignites the gasoline, blowing up the car, and since the temperature is also inverted, everything starts to freeze. John wakes up with a rescue blanket, a mom from hypothermia. They're already moving in a container to Oslo. John realizes that Neil knew about the inversion before they met and wants to find out who hired him. But Neil can't tell you that right now. However, if they survive, he will tell everything. Neil is talking, and Henry is trying to create a device that inverts the whole world. Right now, their world is dominant, as evidenced by the explosion that John survived. But the algorithm will make the inverted world dominant. Everything will be instantly destroyed. After a while, they get to the airport. John puts on his clothes and notices that there is a hole in them. And then there was blood, but there is no more time. They run to the hangar, and the explosion throws John into the room, where he starts a fight with himself. remembering the rule of looking out the window. He waits for himself from real time and begins to run away from Neil, who catches up with him and realizes that an operation is underway. John puts on a mask and runs to steal an ambulance. The inverted Neil, avoiding meeting with himself, puts Claire in the device and now she can recover from her injuries. John wonders why Neil didn't tell him anything when he caught him, and who knows what would have happened if he had said everything. John arrives at Prey's place. Prey says that in the future, one scientist was able to create a device for inverting the world, but he was afraid that this would trigger the complete destruction of the entire universe, and so that this weapon would not be found. He divided it into 9 parts and sent it to the past. Other people from the future will use Andrew to find everything, and he did it. All of this was also Prey's plan to destroy the entire algorithm when it was assembled. After a while, they swim towards a new goal. The algorithm must be activated after John's death, which means he cannot be killed. The problem is that Henry has terminal cancer, and he wants to take the whole world with him. And since he can choose any day, Cap remembers their trip to Vietnam. Then Henry disappeared somewhere. John is going to take the algorithm from the bookmark, and when Henry is eliminated, nothing will happen. Neil wants to know where the bookmark is, but John can't tell him so that nothing will fail. From that day on, the soldiers begin to prepare for the upcoming battle in inverted time. John came to the conclusion that the bookmark would be hidden in Storm Sinus 12, where a bomb would explode on the 14th, which would block the algorithm from the whole world. He needs to be pulled out before the bomb explodes. The soldiers enter the turnstile and are transported to Stocks. The Pinay explains that there will be 2 groups for oncoming traffic in time. The reds are moving forward, and the blues are inverted for all about 10 minutes. Ives and John will have to pick up the contents of the capsule, but they will not be destined to return. At the same time, Cap watches Andres' yacht and waits for the other Cap to leave, after which she climbs onto the yacht and takes as long as possible so that the soldiers can complete their task, which they have already begun to disembark. John sees that the blue team was able to return to the evacuation point, and the clock helps to move close to each other, and trapped Neil gets into a minefield, which is triggered by a car moving towards the landing site. The desperate soldier and the blue team remain forever in the walls of the buildings. After waiting for the right time, the blue team blows up the high-rise building, allowing Ives and John to run into the tunnel. Neil sees Volkov, who came out of the tunnel after laying the bomb. John finds a soldier who had a blindfold that he saw at the opera. Volkov appears in front of him with a walkie-talkie, as Andrew wants to talk to him. Neil finds the turnstile and sees himself upside down. That's why he enters the device and tries to catch up with the real John to tell him about the collapse of the tunnel. But he doesn't have time. Andrew gives the order to eliminate John. At the same moment, the upside-down soldier saves John's life and opens the grate. The reds attack Volkov and the blue man runs away. Volkov is trying to reach the capsule's reset cable, but in the end, he falls down himself. Neil was driving the car that activated the mines. Kat eliminates Andrew and throws his body into the sea, and then jumps herself. That's what the real Cat saw. Neil throws the cable into the tunnel and pulls out the algorithm along with the reds. John is surprised to see Neil. However, you need to complete the task. The algorithm is divided into 3 parts, which they must hide and eliminate. No one else will find them that way. John notices Neil has a bandage, the same as on the body of the eliminated soldier. Neil admits that his boss is John from the future, and the whole plan was his too. Well, now he has to go back to where he died. John tries to change his death, but Neil hints that reality cannot be changed. After a while, Crane is going to eliminate Kat, but their plan is ruined by John getting rid of her. Then he looks at Kat, who now lives with her son. This is where the film comes to an end. We will also be glad to receive your like.